Welcome to the ChargePoint podcast, brought to you by Flexecharge, your gateway to the future of EV charging. In each episode, we dive deep into the world of EV infrastructure, offering insights and perspectives from industry leaders, innovators, and the people at the forefront of deploying charging solutions and networks. Join us to explore the exciting developments that are accelerating our world towards sustainable mobility.
Welcome everyone to today's episode. In this 8th episode of the ChargePoint podcast, we take a closer look at our local EV charging market, the Danish EV charging market. 10 days ago, the 4th edition of the eCar and eCom Expo trade show took place in Copenhagen. Besides discovering and inspecting some really nice new EV models, I had the pleasure to catch up with 4 e-mobility professionals. Through those 4 insightful interviews, I offer you the opportunity to gain perspective on the market's development, challenges and future prospects. First, we'll hear from Erik Scharnowski, CEO of Zap Mobility, an independent CPO who has been operating in the Danish market for 4 years. Erik shares his journey from helping private EV owners navigate complex Danish regulations to becoming a full-service CPO with its own charging network, including fast charging. He provides a candid look into the challenges that independent CPOs are facing in a market dominated by quite large players with deep pockets. Next, we get perspective from Gent Grinvalds, an e-mobility consultant working for Drivkraft Danmark. Drivkraft Danmark is an organization representing the interests of its members, CPOs, utilities, energy providers, as well as fuel station operators, which are deeply committed all to the electrification of transportation in Denmark. Then I spoke to Kenneth Herschel, CEO of Vigo and Stella, formerly known as Vigo Energy. He shares his inspiring story of starting out as a ride-hailing service with a 100% electric fleet and then evolving into a CPO business. Stella's focus is on providing ultra-fast urban charging for professional drivers, and he sees great potential in expanding in other countries. Finally, we round off with expert insight from Nils Dullum, a very seasoned consultant in the field of e-mobility. Nils has a long history in the industry, including as a pioneer in the CPO business, back already in the early 10s, and as one of the driving forces behind Ionity European rollout and other big projects. He gives us an overview of the Danish market in a European context. So, grab a cup of coffee or lean back comfortably in the car seat, and let's dive into those 4 short interviews. All right, good morning, Erik.
Hello.
Thanks for taking the time to be on the ChargePoint podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Can you maybe start to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Erik Scharnowski. I started Zap Mobility May of 2020. Ever since then, started off just as trying to help private chargers and people that already had a private charger figure out how to navigate the complex rules of the Danish market. Everything from getting money back from the state, which isn't simple. And from there, we kind of mothballed and now are full service CPO. From private all the way to business to where we have our own charging network, including fast charging.
All right, good. Here we are at the eCar Expo, the yearly trade show here in Copenhagen. Are there any topics, trends that you are observing on the market and that you wanted to share with our audience?
Yeah, so this is the 4th year of eCar Expo. The very first 3 years, Zap was a sponsor of eCar Expo. So we were there the very first year when it was just in a very small area in Denmark, and it was about a third the size it is today. And then we were sponsors for the last 2 years, and we actually chose not to come this year. And there's a lot of reasons for it. It's cost associated, of course. It's very expensive to be here for eCar Expo, but I also feel that the market has moved towards this is a car show now and not so much about charging options. So 4 years ago, no one knew how to charge cars. No one really knew a lot about electric cars, but the Danish market is very mature compared to other markets where more than 50% of new cars are sold are electric. So The majority of people now know how to charge a car and aren't quite so concerned about how to charge versus what car do I want. Correct. So we've decided that this is more of a car expo now and not so much of a charging expo. So we've chosen not to sink any money into it anymore.
Makes sense. So can you tell us a little bit about the journey from servicing in the early days, private consumers who wanted to move to an electric car to becoming a public CPO also?
Sure. Yeah, so when we started off, like I said, there were only 2 players really on the market at the time that anybody knew about. That was Clever and Eon. Both of them had the exact same solution where you had to rent a charger, and then you could get this tax payment back from the state for every kilowatt that you charge. And when I first bought my electric car in 2019, those are the 2 options that I saw, and it didn't make any sense to me. I don't rent my oven. I don't rent my refrigerator. Why would I rent a charger? I don't understand this. Luckily, at the time, or maybe not luckily, but COVID happened right after that. And I had some time on my hands to look around and see if I could come up with a better solution. So I had this idea. I thought, maybe we can do this better. My next door neighbor happened to be a lawyer. So we started looking at the laws over the next 3 months or so, and found out that it was, in fact, possible for people to own a charger and still offer a service agreement, which is now what the entire market does. So at the time we were brand new. Now the entire market has morphed into that. So from that, we started to go from supporting charge points which were already bought and installed to selling our own charge points that we knew qualified. And then so that started our web shop portion of that, which was about 6 months after I started. And then from there, we started going from private sales only into commercial sales, business sales. And then, of course, the last pillar, which we started last year, is the fast charging market, and trying to get a piece of or provide a better option in the public charging market, where we have payment, which follows hourly prices, and you are not bound by any type of subscription. So you can just pay as you go, use a credit card, very simple.
Okay, great. We come back to the dynamic prices more in depth. Maybe we want to talk about how you build your tech stack. It's okay to name drop Monta.
Yeah.
They're part of the ecosystem. Sure. We also, friends somehow. So as you were growing and building this business, how did you build up your tech stack, both hardware and software? Tell us a bit about your journey.
Yeah, so I think it's really all about finding partners. And like I said, we started in May of 2020. Monta came around in November of 2020. And at the time, I was just starting to scale up. So, I had my first 70 customers. I remember when I had my first 70, that was so neat. And then all of a sudden, I had 700. And that became a problem because I had to do everything manually at the time. Everything was just on an Excel sheet. It was really difficult. Having to pay money back individually into an account was not something that was viable, nor was it scalable. And I got a call from Casper at Monta who said, "Hey, we've got this idea. We've got this software. I've got this team." And I said, "Hey, that sounds like a really good idea."
And the Casper is the CEO.
Casper, CEO of Monta, yes. Yeah. And so I said, "Yeah, well, absolutely." So we were the first partner with Monta when it came to both refusion, so getting money back from the state for your charging, and then supporting private chargers. And we've been with them ever since. So we've watched Monta morph from 6 people to 300, while we've gone from 2 employees to 6. But it's been very interesting to follow their growth. And we've had a lot of, at least certainly in the early years, we had a lot of feedback and gave them a lot of direction on where we think they should go. And so some of the chargers that you see today on the Danish market, for instance, Zaptec Go, which is by far the largest on the market today, was one that we came into partnership with Zaptec and actually launched a TV ad in 2022 with Zaptec together. And that's kind of what in my personal opinion, made Zaptec what it is today. So we threw Zaptec on the map, and now Zaptec is the charger of choice for the majority of CPOs.
Being also on the Danish market for a long time, we even know each other from previous venture where I was. I definitely say, I don't think it's exaggerated to say that you've contributed to the success of Monta and Zaptec. I would be exaggerating.
Well, again, it's a partnership. I mean, there's no doubt that we rely on them, and I think they relied on us. But how much of that exists today is very difficult to say. So Zaptec has grown and is massive now, especially in Denmark, and Monta is now in 18 or 19, 20 plus countries. So it's been fun to be a part of that and to watch that growth. But it's also, of course, caused issues in that as companies get larger, they take in a lot of other customers, and it becomes more difficult for your voice to get heard. And that's just how it is, and I understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'd like to come back to one of the most fascinating, again, because with my background in electricity retail, the spot price is something quite fascinating. And I remember it's something you talked about very early. So tell us a bit about how you came into the dynamic pricing, which is something that now the whole of Europe CPOs are looking into to pursue, again, more usage rates. So tell us a bit about this journey from the idea to execution.
Yeah, so, the idea was pretty straightforward. I mean, I didn't understand why, we see gas prices that changed 10 times a day. We've had that technology now for 20, 30 years. Why in the world am I still paying 4 krona for charging no matter what time of the day it is, when we know that electricity changes every hour? the price changes every hour in Denmark, and it changes a lot. Sometimes, especially 2 years ago, it was changing 5 times in an hour. So to charge my car could cost 150 krona or 5. And that is really, really important that we do it at the right time. It's good for the grid. Obviously it's cheaper. We're probably using renewable energy because it's cheaper. So it's really important to incentivize people to charge when the price is low for a lot of reasons. So I kind of had that idea, and I wasn't the only one. We talked with Monta. Monta said, yes, we're pursuing the same idea. And it requires a significant amount of IT capability. You have to pull data via API from Energy Hub and Energy Net and Data Hub. And that was beyond my capability, but Monta was able to figure that out. So the first thing we had was the ability to do dynamic pricing via Monta's app, which is nice. But if you don't have Monta's app and you're just driving through Denmark, show up at a fast charger, you're going to still be able to charge with dynamic pricing. So we were one of the first ones in Denmark to launch dynamic charging on a credit card machine and with a very large display so that you could see it just like you do at a gas station. So when you drive by, it says price right now, 2.35 krona. And price changes every hour. And when you go to the charger and scan your credit card, it says that dynamic price, 2.35 krona. So that's, what you're going to pay exactly. We were, again, one of the first ones to partner with Monta to make all that happen, particularly with the credit card, which is a very difficult integration, but works really well, actually. And now all of the sites that we have 30 plus fast charging or rapid charging points, and they all have that credit card capability.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I must say it has created some buzz on the internet, definitely on LinkedIn. As I said, I've been seeing being shared by people like Flexecharge, who's really roaming Europe, talking about great experiences.
Yeah,
so
right,
I think you really, again, helped to put Denmark on the map and again, show what's ahead. Fantastic. So Eric, now you've been active on the Danish market for 4 years. You see also what's happening around Europe. So if we look at the EV charging market in Denmark, so how has it evolved and where is it going? And to the extra question, how tough a market is it for CPOs, new entrants, to get in?
So we have 3 levels of that, right? So we've got the private market, we've got the business market, and then we've got the fast charging public market. So there are 3 distinct things in Denmark. So let's take the private market first. The private market was and still is dominated by one actor, and that's Clever. They've got about 50 to 60% of the market share, depending on who you ask. And they have also a broad network of dealerships that sell their charger. And if you go around to your eCar Expo here today, for instance, Bud has a Clever charger that Clever just gets to put there because they have that partnership, which I'm sure is great for Clever, but probably not so good for Bud. The point is,
or maybe not for the end user either.
Well, it's absolutely terrible for the end user, but that's another story, right? So, but that allows them to penetrate the market at the very, very beginning, which is very smart. You get the people that are buying the car, they pick a Clever charger, find out 6 months later it's way too expensive, and then swap to something else, which is what we're seeing. So the first 6 months of ownership is a Nordus Oko or Clever, which is sold through the dealership. Very quickly, most people figure out it's way too expensive. I don't understand this, or why am I paying a flat rate when I could pay half the price if I just use smart charging when prices were cheap? And then they come and find us, and they swap to a Zap2Go or to an Easy, and they use flexible charging pricing. Not everybody does, but a lot do. So what I think we're seeing is a lot of waste. We're seeing people that are buying chargers. Those chargers are being demounted, and another charger is being put up. Which is terrible. There's no sustainability there. And what we try and do, at least in Zap, is we try to support as many chargers as possible, but we can't support them all. I mean, there's only so many I can fix and repair. So we support about 10 brands, which is more than anybody else. Most people support 1 or 2. But that being said, if we have a Clever customer that calls us, well, we can't help them because that charger is not theirs. Clever's going to take that charger back. And so, of course, we need to deliver a new charger there. But at least, those people have now driven cars for 6 months, have an idea of what an electric car is about, understand now the importance of charging when prices are low. At least we hope they understand that. So I think the only real opportunities there are in the market today is to continue to educate users, particularly as we get past the 50% of new car sales now in electric cars, to understand that a flat rate model is probably not good for the vast majority of people. It's not sustainable, it's too expensive, and you're locked into an agreement for many, many months and you will probably end up losing money.
Wouldn't be a bit like in the telecom industry where there've been different subscription over time, and people are getting wiser and wiser, understanding, looking through, understanding what fits them. Right?
100%. In fact, I would say that if we look at the charging market now, it's very similar to the telemarket was 15 years ago, where it was just craziness and, everybody didn't know what to do. And it still happens today where, people will try and swap from one charging to another charging operator just because they got a telephone call. Oh, you can save €2 if you swap to us. And I mean, come on. Yes, we want to save some money, but let's also be realistic on how difficult it is to swap out a charger and get a new operating system and download a new app and do these things. So,
So that's a private market.
Yeah.
So how is the landscape on business charging? How has it evolved? How fast is it evolving? And how do you see the opportunities?
I see the business opportunity as zero in the Danish market. And there's two reasons for it. One, you've got the big players who are not afraid to lose money. So, and by that I mean like the Clever, the Eons, the Norluses. They're spending millions of krona and they're losing that amount of money, putting up chargers everywhere. And they'll do it for businesses essentially for free. That's not something that I or most people can compete with. I can't afford to put up chargers and lose money on it every single time.
As a small independent CPO, it's difficult.
So that I don't see an opportunity there for really anybody to come in unless you're okay with putting down, say, a couple 100 million krona and hope that you get that money back over time. What I think we're seeing in general across Europe is that people don't use AC chargers. AC public charging is not something that people use. It's slow. It's relatively expensive. DC charging is where that's the wave. Everybody's using DC chargers. They're much faster. Yes, they're way expensive to install, but you can put out a lot of kilowatts real quick. So I think that the AC charging is going to peak, and we're going to see, okay, there's 5,000 AC chargers, 10,000, whatever it is, and we're probably not going to see more. Businesses may continue to put in a few for their employees, but I just don't see a large market there anymore. It's small, and we still sell quite a few business chargers, but it's 4 plugs here, it's 8 plugs here, it's 10 plugs there. It's not like it's 500 anymore. Those days are gone. Now, if we move to the next stage, which is fast charging, when we get a question like that is, well, how many employees do you have? What are you looking to do? Well, then you should put in a 60 kilowatt fast charger. Then they can charge in 25 minutes and move their car. That's way smarter than having 12 plugs that are there for 8 hours. And it's about the same amount of kilowatts that are required. So, and the installation cost is going to be about the same. Plus, you have a fast charger now. So that's what we push. We push especially 60 kilowatters, 50 kilowatters, things that can charge a car in 45 minutes to an hour, but don't cost a boatload of money to install because you don't need all these amps. And amps cost a lot of money in Denmark.
That's important.
So I think that is still there. And I think that if we look at the market today, people understand that. We're seeing players that are also capitalizing on that, from taxi companies that are really working to try and get their fast charging solutions out there. And then, of course, you've got, again, the big players that have put in thousands now combined fast charging plugs throughout Denmark. And those are very, very, very expensive. The infrastructure on that it's quite an investment. But I do think that that's the right way to go.
And on route charging, like along the motorways, I mean, how do you see the landscape? I mean, it has moved quite fast.
So I can only speak to the Danish portion of that, but everything is done via tender. And whoever pays the most wins, period. That's basically how the tenders go. There are, of course, other things that they look at, but really all they care about is who's going to pay us the most. And that's usually going to be your big boys. So that's going to be the Clever, the Oko, the Eons.
Deep pockets.
Those with deep pockets who don't mind spending 40 million krona to give to Vejdirektoratet and say, okay, we want that location. We tried to do those a couple of years ago. First of all, it's very, very difficult to go through the paperwork. But second of all, there's no way we could compete, right? I mean, we have fantastic prices for the end user, but we can't offer the tender the person who's offering the tender, we can't offer them anything extra. And so we never won anything. So we stopped trying.
Okay. Well, that's a pretty hardcore and blunt picture. But Danish market is mature. It's been developing a lot. And it's a very tough market with very big players who have deep pockets. That's a very short picture.
That is pretty much right.
Which is intense competition. Okay, great. Eric, thanks a lot for those insights. 4 years on the market feels like a lifetime. So you certainly have a lot to share. Thanks a lot. And people can connect with you on LinkedIn if they want to know more about the Danish market and have some good advice. And thank you very much for your time.
I appreciate your time. Thanks.
See you around.
See ya.
Hi, Gent. Thank you for taking the time to join me on the ChargePoint podcast today at the eCar Expo. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you very much for being allowed to participate in your podcast. So my name, of course, is Gent. I work at Drivkraft Danmark, and I've been working in the e-mobility area for about 8 years now. Started at a knowledge hub called the Copenhagen Electric, which was financed by the regional government of the capital region of Denmark.
Great. Nice to have you on the podcast. Can you maybe tell us a bit about your current position at Drivkraft Danmark? What kind of organization is it?
Yeah, so Drivkraft Danmark is an industry organization for mainly the charge operators of Denmark. I think we have about all major charge operators are part of our organization. And we have been working, we also have the former fuel operators as part of organizations also. So we are very well represented, and we are very focused about the workings of the market. As I can say, we're one of the only fuel and retail organizations in Denmark which is 100% focused on e-mobility as part of the road forwards.
So does it mean that within your groups, you're no longer discussing if it's a good idea to electrify? It's really about just how to get there, right?
Yeah. From a Danish context and also what we work with at European level, talk is not about which kind of alternative fuel is the one for electrification. It's only the talk about that the electrification is the only way forward.
Absolutely, yeah. So why is Drivkraft Denmark present today at the eCar Expo and eCom Expo, so the two parts of the trade show?
Yeah, so of course we're there because our members are there, but we are also at a trade show as eCar Expo and eCom Expo because it's such a very good place to take the dialogues, take the discussion about what is happening and what is trending in the e-mobility market. It's a good way to test some of do a lot of knowledge sharing, and I also think it's a good place also to be present and showcase how far we are in regards to the transition.
Great. So if you were to highlight a few really hot topics, what are the biggest topics this year at the show?
Yeah, so some of the big topics I would say in this show, and also something I've been part of the presenting, is of course how do we do an efficient and well-structured development of charging infrastructure in the cities. We have a lot of debate going on about the different kinds of charging infrastructure which is needed. And I will say that it be a very technical discussion about the percentage, about how much should be ultra fast charging and how much should be curbside charging and how much is implemented by, of course, the building directives and other kinds of EU regulation. So that's one of the very hot topics. Another one, what I would say, is how is it going with the heavy transport sector and their current transition, where we have showcased from a Danish perspective, from a Drivkraft Danmark perspective, that we are going to see an enrollment of about 18 charging infrastructure stations in Denmark for heavy duty charging infrastructure when we go out of 2024. That's very interesting. And of course, new technology development in vehicles. What will happen when we go up to 800 volt technology in the vehicles? What will that say? And the integration of the electric vehicle in the energy grid.
Fantastic. So from your chair, if you look at the Danish EV charging market, how have you seen it evolve the past 2-3 years?
It has evolved explosively, I would say, especially if you look at the Danish context. It's such an interesting to see that right now we have about 57% of all new sold car in Denmark are electric. So the market has really exploded. The majority of all electric is electric vehicles, and it's the same. We're seeing the same incremental increase when we look at heavy duty vehicle sales, where last year it was 2.5%, which was electric trucks. Now it's over 11 to 13%, which are electric trucks of all new sold
Fantastic.
trucks. So that says something. And you're also seeing a major establishment of electric vehicle charging infrastructure. From I started 1 year ago to now, when I started, we had 150 ultra-fast charging stations. Right now, my last count, we were about 350 ultra-fast charging stations in the public sphere. So you're really seeing a big development. And looking just into the close future, we right now have a big tender, or the state has, on all the big service stations along the motor highways. And what we're seeing here is that they will all be combined with big charging hubs. So we're going to be, when you drive through Denmark, you're going to have charging hubs everywhere along the major motor highways.
Absolutely. So electric vehicle paradise looking like that, yeah. So and so beyond those big tenders that are coming, anything else that you want to highlight about what do you see happening on the horizon in 25 in this industry in Denmark?
Yeah, we have had some very, very hard pricing competition, and when you look at it, you have some really 1 kilowatt of in Denmark cost about, on average on a public charger, about 3.5 kroner. And we are really seeing a lot of the major players also taking in dynamic charging prices. So the time of day that you arrive at the charging station, you will have something to say about the pricing. And that's something we are also, I think in 2025, we are going to see an increase in. So not only are we going to see a lot more ultra-fast charging being developed, we're also going to see a very hard price competition in regards to the specific pricing of the charging infrastructure. And of course, from what I can see, we're also going to see that the 57% of new sold cars, which is electric right now, that's also going to increase.
Yeah, we can only expect. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for sharing those. So as a last point, since you are welcoming from time to time new members that are joining your organization, coming from outside, attracted by the very fast-growing and mature but also very competitive Danish market, do you have some piece of advice for CPOs that might be interested in developing their business in Denmark?
Yeah, I will say that we are not the biggest country in the world, and that has something to say about the land and the pricing increase in land in regards to developing charging infrastructure. At the same time, we are a very interesting country when you look into the transit between the north and the southern parts of Europe. But what I can say is that it's really important as a CPO when you go into the Danish market, of course, always get in contact with us, as we'll do us, to ensure to help you in any way if we can. But it is to look into the regulatory system of Denmark, especially if you look into where would you see yourself in regards to the consumer or the customer. Because we have a lot of different regulation right now, which does that we also have a very skewed competition in the market where we have seen a lot of bundling products. Not to say that they're all bad, but we do see a lot of bundling between home charging and public charging. And these kind of offers is something that you have to look into. So you cannot only look at the kilowatt pricing, which is fierce in itself. You also have to look into what are the kinds of products that the charge operators are actually selling to the end customer. At the same time, you also have to look into, of course, what is actually happening in regards to the public tenders. As I said, we right now have this big tender with the service stations. We also have a lot of tenders in regards to the municipalities in Denmark, because they actually own a lot of the public spaces and parking spaces in the cities. So in regards to the Energy Performance Building Directive, they are the ones who are actually bidding a lot of the public space for charging infrastructure. These are some of the things that you have to look into when you go as an international CPO and try to get your leg into a very price competitive market.
Absolutely, yeah. Good. So that's great. Would you say that of course, I'm expecting that the AFIR regulation is being deployed everywhere in Europe, but would you say that it's really being followed and pushed through in Denmark?
Yeah, I would say that we actually had an advantage in some of the points because it was already instated in law in a Danish context that every charger for 50 and more in kilowatt was mandated to have some kind of credit card or ad hoc payment. Because there was already a push here. So when AFIR came into effect, the whole talk about now that everything has to be ad hoc payment was already very well implemented in a Danish context. I also think that's why you're seeing this pricing competition, which is going on, because you cannot only adhere to having your fixed group and doing roaming, because a lot of the transaction in the Danish context is actually done at ultra-fast charging ad hoc.
Absolutely. That's a good point, yeah. Well, I think that's a great picture. Thanks for sharing your insights. I hope you have a great end of the trade show, and looking forward to catching up with you at some point. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Gent.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Yeah, bye.
Hi, Kenneth.
Hi.
Thanks for taking the time to be in the ChargePoint podcast today at the eCar Expo. Can you introduce yourself briefly, please?
Sure, my pleasure. And good to see you. It's an amazing expo. My name is Kenneth Herschel, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Vigo, which is a ride-hailing service, originally born as a ride-hailing service, but later turned into and pivoted slightly into also being a ChargePoint operator. And we actually just yesterday announced that we are rebranding our company, the ChargePoint part of it, to Stella. So I'm here in my capacity of being CEO and co-founder of both Vigo and Stella. So it's a proud moment today.
Yeah, congratulations with the rebranding. A very successful, very nice brand. So can you tell us a bit about the journey? So from starting the ride-hailing service and then finding out that there could be a CPO opportunity. Tell us a bit about this.
Sure. Yeah, we were founded back in 2019, and when we launched, there was a sort of gap in the Danish market for a new ride-hailing service. Uber had left the market back in 2017. There was sort of a standstill. The existing taxi industry thought it was business as usual, and they really needed a big disruption. So what we wanted to do is come into the market with a better service, sort of a green alternative to a normal taxi, in the sense that we were one of the first in the world to have a fully EV fleet, so 100% electric cars. We also wanted to deliver much better service and better user experience for riders and so on, and sort of in that journey, and I think after 3 to 4 months having 40 cars in our platform, we realized that there was lots of talks about there was not enough infrastructure for EV cars. We realized that sort of on our own skin, and meaning that a lot of our drivers complained that there was not enough access to fast charging for their cars. A taxi driver or a ride-hailing driver is slightly different in their pattern. They usually live in the city. Sometimes they have 2 shifts in a day. So they can't rely on slow AC overnight charging. They need access to the fast charging. Yes. And instead of sort of hoping that someone else will fix it, our previous CFO did some calculations, and I almost remember him coming running down through the office saying, "Make calculations, we can make money on it.
We have to make it."
Yeah, and that was sort of the start of us becoming a ChargePoint operator. It was merely initially to solve our own problem, not having access to fast charging.
Very inspiring, yeah, indeed. Super. Så kan vi gå over i en anden tænker. Jeg synes, det er interessant at tale tech-stack og bygge ligesom, ja, altså hvordan I har så bygget CPU'en, ikke? Altså også med hardware, I kigger på. Så. Super exciting. So can you take us back a bit to, again, the assumption? And so you decide, okay, on paper it looks good. So how did you start to build it? Hardware, software, how did you approach it?
It's a good question because, again, our history from the ride-hailing is an important part of how we see ourselves going forward. But we built the whole ride-hailing platform ourselves. We have internal developers, in-house developers who have built a ride-hailing platform from scratch.
And I believe it was you built it back in the days, right?
No, it's actually my co-founder Patrick, who's our CTO, who's a lead architect of the initial part of it. But then when we wanted to start the charge point operating business, we were like, okay, we know how much it costs to actually develop things ourselves. And before we know exactly what we want to develop, we want to partner up with a different company. So we partnered up with a company called Spirit, who were sort of the initial helpers. They not only provided us with the software, they also provided us with knowledge about how to do this. Because bear in mind, we were pretty good at doing ride-hailing. We knew absolutely nothing about charge points and operating them and so on. So they helped us a lot. What we did with the ride-hailing is that we wanted to build a better user experience. And that's why it was important for us to sort of have full control of everything from A to C in our backend and our front end. What we're doing now in Stella is that everything which is consumer facing, that means our app, when you log in as a customer to the website and so on, everything there is being built. We're building purpose-built tools for professional drivers, such as taxi drivers, ride-hailers, and so on. And that's done in-house, but it's all built on top of Monta, which is now our backend provider.
Makes sense.
So you can kind of say that we take the best from Monta, and what the professional drivers need, we fix that for them.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, and
then obviously part of that tech stack, which is very important, is that we are happy customers of Flexecharge.
Yeah.
Which I know from our operations team has helped them a lot in operating our charges, monitoring them, and so on. So important part of the tech stack.
Yeah. Thank you for mentioning it. And there are exciting opportunities with VPPs and so on. We'll tease the audience about that. More on that in the future, hopefully. Great. Sid? So tell us a bit from your seat, how do you see the EV charging market in Denmark? It's quite a particular and quite competitive market. How do you see it and how do you position yourself?
It's actually interesting, the Danish market, because, obviously compared to Norway, which has always been sort of the laboratory of EV charging in the world, because they've been so far ahead with the rollout of EV infrastructure in general. The Danish market has really caught up. And what we are seeing in the Danish market is that there's actually price competition like nowhere else in the world. So because of a big player like Clever, who've been having their subscription product, that drives prices to a lower point than we see anywhere else in the world, which makes it interesting. And also, I also want to say that right now it seems as though there is a pretty good balance, in terms of supply and demand. If you go to rural areas and so on, it's a different story. But when you look at the major cities, it's the balance is pretty good. But bear in mind that the numbers of EVs coming into the Danish market is growing and growing and growing. So even though we might have a situation now where it's status quo, that's not going to be the case in a year from now. So we still need to invest into infrastructure. We still need to make sure that there is more infrastructure coming into the market to solve not the problems of today, but the problems of tomorrow. For ourselves, we've started slow. We have 6 locations in Greater Copenhagen. 5 locations in Greater Copenhagen and 1 in Aarhus. But we're rolling out 15 locations in Greater Copenhagen and part of the Northern Zealand next year. So we are busy.
And you are urban before everything, right?
Yes. We sort of our tagline is that we are ultra fast and urban fast charging, built for professionals, but open to all. And we will continue to be urban with a few exceptions. We have the Danish equivalent to Silicon Valley, something called Lauto Park. We have a station there. That's not really an urban area, but it's a high density traffic area. There's a lot of people coming into the daytime, and that's why we have a hub out there. And you can see in the future that we will have similar hubs in, active areas, even though it's not urban.
Yeah. So if you look into the future, where is Stella going now with its new name? What is the journey ahead of you?
We actually recently, and it was announced yesterday, we won a tender in Oslo for 4. Thank you very much. For 4 central locations in Oslo. By November 1st, all taxis in Oslo have to be electric.
Wow! So
no more ICE cars, which is I would say it's a very ambitious decision that they've taken. But it also means that they need to be ambitious in putting in infrastructure.
Yeah.
Hence the tender.
Yeah, I heard about I saw the map that it was actually very underserved. It was all AC, again, from the first generation, basically, right? So Oslo, again, you said laboratory ahead, but they were actually behind.
Apart from, let's say, the rest of Norway, which is far ahead, Oslo is far behind. There's not enough fast charging within the city. And that's sort of the problem that we are trying to solve now. We won 4 out of 5. We're really proud of it. The next hub, the first hub, will open within a couple of months from now, and then we will be serving the professional drivers of Oslo and We also have a few locations now locked down in Stockholm. So we'll be a true Scandinavian charge point operator sometime next year.
Fantastic. And so what's the end goal? If you just look at 30, I think I saw that on your presentation on the stage. What's your goal for 30?
3,000 charge points in 10 countries. And bear in mind, if you compare 3,000 charge points to some of the other charge point operators, people might say that it's not very ambitious. But there are two things. One is it's DC, so it's ultra fast charging. Number two, we focus only on urban areas. That means we're going to be in cities, in airports, and other places where it's high density, high traffic, and so on. And by that, we actually feel that 3,000 is a good and ambitious goal for us, and we're looking forward to achieving it. Hopefully,
it is indeed.
Fingers crossed.
Yes, absolutely. We'll follow you all the way. And I must say, again, not because we are, again, your provider, we can see that there is an insane utilization rate, which I think a lot of CPOs can only dream of because of your location. So if you can keep that up and scale up, it's looking good. So thanks a lot, Kenneth, for your time, and see you around.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thanks for taking the time to speak with me today. Thanks.
Hi, Nils. Good to see you. And thank you for taking a short time to be on the ChargePoint podcast. Can you maybe start by introducing yourself?
Yes, thank you. And likewise, Christoph, we've known each other through many years, right? And that's what recognizes, or that's what, the industry still can do for us is the network that when we've been in this business for many years, that keep us current, and that we stay in touch with to know what others are doing as well, and how the development in every parts of this e-mobility ecosystem that each of us are working in. For my part, I started back in 2008, because I had this idea that energy might be interesting. I didn't know anything much about it. And I saw the early days of electric vehicles and the roadster of Tesla and the launch of the first connected charging point in 2008 in San Jose, right? And I just moved back to Europe from 18 years in the US and wanted to enter this field. So upon a couple of years of figuring out how the industry was structured, what does an ecosystem mean, and the ideas behind connected infrastructure, I struck a deal in 2010 with RWE, big German utility, and started my own CPO network back then. So certainly early days. But I would say this was also the first connected network developer, charging network developer in Europe at the time. And I figured with a German utility and a German auto industry, there's got to be a good match. And certainly there was. And then I, in those early days, was in the market in Denmark and branching out at times with certain car model launches to other Scandinavian countries as well, because I was working with a German utility that could scale this type of stuff with the business that I could bring into my own CPO at the time. In 2017, early 2017, I divested out of my CPO model, and it was taken over by others to continue, while I stepped into the consulting role that I've already had at that point for a year or two in the early days of Ionity. It was actually under Porsche to start up before they could form the legal entity Ionity, and I was tasked with starting one of the regions for them back in those days. And that was a big learning, you can say learning step for me, because we went from 50 kW DC to 350, which is still the standard today for cars. And the deployment from a technological viewpoint, from a grid viewpoint, and from an implementation standpoint and servicing and maintenance standpoint was all new. And I was even tasked with building the first 350 kW station in Europe at the time, which is actually in Åbo in Denmark.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah. You definitely great inspiration there. It's true. Yeah, I had the pleasure to meet you already back in 2014. Yeah, and
that's long now.
Yeah, exactly. And then working a bit together in 2015 when I came back to Denmark. Fantastic. Yeah, to be still in touch. Absolutely. Pleasure is shared. So tell me, why are you here today at eCar Expo, eCom Expo? What's your, what are you expecting from this? What's your purpose here?
Right. I mean, so eCar Expo, as the name says, right, it's exposing, certain elements within the e-mobility ecosystem, right, at this event, which has grown over the years because the proliferation of electric vehicles and electric mobility, has grown so much, and with it comes these conferences, or how should we say, trade shows, or however we look at them, right? To display cars and new technology. And I think last year was the first year that they had a truck entity as well for heavy duty vehicles. So that's grown also this year. So those two segments, are interesting to follow. But for me per se, I follow them every day. So it's not new to me. What is important for me is the people, right? The network that I gain, my knowledge from over time that gives me what I offer in the market as a consultant, right? So for me to stay current with people, with technologies, and where the market is going is why I'm at the eCar Expo.
Yeah. And anything, what were the one or two hottest topics this year that you could spot at the trade show for now?
Two hottest topics. Good one, right? I mean, the one thing that's for sure is happening is just the fact that, in Denmark, we're adopting electric vehicles much faster than anybody anticipated after being, in a period of much slower than people anticipated, right? So we literally had this catch-up effect for electric mobility and the transition of the transport sector, which it really is. But with that, of course, now we've seen the last year the heavy-duty vehicle side, so the trucks, electrifying as well. And so from that perspective, the technology development, the pressure on technologies to develop and evolve now and embrace bigger pieces of modalities as the trucks, which brings on all kinds of other aspects of energy, with it, and requirements and needs. It certainly has intensified the need for new technologies, better, or you can say next generation charging infrastructure, and the development, or I should rather say solidification of standards, because the standards have been developed certainly over time, but the solidification of them, right? That's the big issue, because you can have a protocol that everybody agrees upon, but it's interpreted differently, just like a legal set for lawyers that interpret a legal set differently, right? Yeah. So we have some interoperability issues that we're dealing with overall. But from a standardization point, things are in place. Now we just need to actually work with it to the point where everybody then can get that interpretation of open protocols into the same user experience, which should be, I say the word now, seamless.
I'll say the word exactly, seamless. Yeah. So with I know you're working on a total global scale. So, but let's if we again based in Denmark and having worked as a CPO back then, I really wanted to hear a bit your perspective. So how shortly how has the EV charging landscape evolved in Denmark the past few years? And where is it going? What's going to happen next year? What do you see?
I mean, we have certain tax provisions in Denmark that makes the you can say the proliferation of infrastructure and the existence of public infrastructure very specific to Denmark, and that's made it you can say difficult for outsiders to come in. It's been difficult for anyone outside the business to come from you can say the bottom up approach. So you're either a utility player or another oil and gas player that knows they have to get into this, and they can test and try and work with the capital that they are otherwise making on their traditional business to compensate for these investments, and making mistakes and discoveries into technologies and developing different things and figuring out how this is going to work without failing, you can say, because their business is not dependent on it, right? And that's what we've seen in Denmark a lot. So you have certain players, based on the tax provisions that are in the market. What happened, I think, in Denmark, generally speaking, was the uptake of electric mobility that suddenly went so quickly. We went from 100,000 vehicles to 300,000 vehicles in a very short period of time, like 2 years or something, right? And I think this precipitated a lot of interest from the outside, but with a lot of questions as to how does this market actually work with these tax provisions. But be that as I think we've talked about before, Denmark being the connecting country between the Nordics, right, which has more normal conditions, from a tax perspective for operating infrastructure, and then down into Germany and the rest of Europe. Denmark has become interesting from that perspective, that we've taken on e-mobility so quickly and have so many vehicles to work with now, which makes it interesting to invest in Denmark and subsequently try to figure out how to work within it. I also have to say on that note, which would probably be your next question, is, why are they coming in now? Well, the volume is one thing. The fact of the matter is that these players that are coming in, they're actually just scaling their business, meaning that they're already active in other countries and they realize this is a normal progression. Denmark happens to be next on their way up through Sweden and Norway. And if you can't scale, right, and you're missing one country, then you're missing that part of your scaling roadmap. Yep. And that's actually, we see big players coming in. We don't see small players coming in. And the big players just doing their scaling game, and Denmark is on the roadmap. There we are.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I know you're working a lot on the electrification of heavy duty. You mentioned it. So where do you place Denmark in the European race in terms of electrification of heavy duty?
Well, there's no doubt we have some very committed charging operators in Denmark that are certainly in that segment already from the liquid fuel side that are going into it. We also have some, new utility players coming into it, certainly because it is a predictable business with routes that are known and times that are known when they'll show up. And, truth be told, the batteries are big, right, in a truck, which means that once you have a truck customer, it accounts for like 5 vehicles, for example, in one charging session. And that's a very attractive customer to have from a CPO perspective. And if you can even predict when they come, there's lots of other things that comes with it. When you operate infrastructure, that's an advantage. So it's actually a very attractive market to go into for trucks. But certainly the capital or the capex or the investments needed to invest in the infrastructure, right, to accommodate trucks and expect to expand the capacity of the trucks will be able to take, plus scaling at the end, right? It's not, it's a big task.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Nils. I know you have still some busy afternoon, so thank you for dropping by, and we'll be in touch again soon.
My pleasure. Absolutely. Thank you. It's good to see you again.
Thank you.
Take care, Christoph.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. I hope that you liked the deep dive into the Danish EV charging market. Today we heard 4 unique perspectives: an independent CPO, an industry organization, a ride-hailing service turned CPO, and an experienced consultant, each shedding light on Denmark's charging landscape and what's next. To me, few standout takeaways. First, intense price competition. As Eric from Zap Mobility explained, Denmark's market is tough for small players, with big names offering low prices and free installations. Kenneth from Stella echoed this, highlighting Denmark as one of the most competitive EV charging markets internationally. Second point, the shift to fast charging. Public AC charging, as Eric predicts, will stagnate due to its higher cost and slower speeds. The future is DC, with ultra-fast charging stations rapidly expanding across Denmark. 3. Dynamic pricing is key. Both Eric and Gent see dynamic pricing as the future, benefiting consumers and helping balance the grid. Even Eric even pioneered this in Denmark with credit card-enabled dynamic pricing. 4th, heavy vehicle electrification is really accelerating. Gent emphasized the rise of electric truck sales and the growth of heavy-duty vehicle charging stations, positioning Denmark as a hub for e-truck charging. And this was confirmed by Nils Dullum. I hope this episode offered valuable insight. Stay tuned for more deep dives into other markets across Europe with insight from local experts. As always, if you have suggestions for future guests in the EV charging or energy space, drop us an email at hello@flexecharge.com. Until next time, drive safely and take care.